Hello everybody, and this is another Brexit video. I thought I'd do one in response to Theresa May's statement. It seems like all Theresa May has done is crossed out Plan A and put in Plan B in permanent market. There doesn't seem to be any difference to what's being voted on. She's also trying to pull the same trick again with a second referendum, saying there isn't a call for it. I think there is stronger evidence. There is evidence that the nation may have changed its mind. But the only way we are really going to be able to see if that is the case is if we have a second referendum. Now, Brexiteers are kind of kicking off saying, well, you've already had a vote. Why should we vote again? Well, people have the right to change their mind. I mean, with that logic in itself, that means that we can't have another general election if things don't go the way the government wants? Or does that mean we can't have you can never vote for another strike? So the arguments to say, well, we've had one, we can't have one again, are really weak arguments. Now, I can understand that there is people on Remain's side who do want a second go, and we have valid reasons. Number one, there is evidence that the Remain campaign cheated. There's evidence of outside interference from Cambridge Analytica and the Russians, and also other factors that are now becoming apparent that the vote was tampered with. And that's a rational argument for why, in any other election, then you would have the results would be null and void, the people taking part would have been suspended and no longer allowed to vote, and possibly face prison sentence. This obviously we can't do that with Brexit because you can't just suspend no or yes. So the only way to really resolve this would be another referendum to decide it, and this is just obvious. There's also the fact that people who were 16 at the time, 16, 17, were not legally allowed to vote, yet people who were in their 60s, who probably won't ever understand the benefits or the repercussions of leaving the EU, they were allowed to vote. So their futures, so 16, 17-year-olds' futures was decided by people who may not be around to see the full repercussions of it. So for them, they have a valid role. And if you look on the people's vote, you will actually see a lot of young people who are 16, who are 7, 19, 18 now. And that's because they didn't even get a chance to vote. Yet you deprive them of their vote because you don't want... You said we've already had a vote. They didn't. They were kind of not allowed to. Yet you can't say we'll give them a referendum in 30 years. Yeah, 30 years, they've got to face the brunt of it. It's not a case of if you don't like your leader, you can vote him out. Or if you don't like the government, you can vote him out. This will be a permanent thing. This will be dangerous. We have to get it. Everyone has to understand about voting. So this is another reason why people want a second referendum. Now, if we talk about the Leavers, why don't they want it? Well, I can understand their arguments as well. They say that we already had the vote, we already decided, we shouldn't have another vote because it'll be the same. But my counter argument to that is that yes, you did have a vote, but you only won it by 8%. Now, that 8% could have been completely different. Say someone decided to turn up and vote differently that day. So 8% is not really the will of the people that everyone claims it is. It's actually the opposite. And I do not believe that out of that, the 8%, that 8% that pushed it over the edge, that they all wanted a no-deal Brexit. Because a lot of people were arguing about a Norway-style deal, a Canada-style deal. There was no one was saying when we leave, apart from obviously Remain, there was no argument of anyone saying, well, when we leave, that's it. We're going to wash our hands completely. No one wanted that. My personal belief is I don't believe no one wanted that. I believe what's happening now is we are getting people who are kind of who voted leave and do not like the fact that they've been lied to, they've been misguided. So rather than blame the people who did actually lie to them, they would rather spend their time blaming the EU for defending their own place, for asking for money that they need to have in order to recoup losses that UK leaving the EU will cause, and the trade agreements that are now going to be very difficult to ratify. It's very simple things like these that they need to understandably deal with. Remember, the EU, once we leave the club, we are outsiders. So the EU is only going to be looking after its core members now. They're not going to do us any favours like we think we are. They're going to more concentrate on their members, and they'll take a deal that's better for them. They won't take a deal that's better for us, and that's the truth. And WTO rules, they're not as great as everyone makes it out. Someone asked me, do I understand it? Yes, I do. WTO rules means that you put a tariff in place. You have to make your own. You put forward a tariff, and all the other WTO countries agree with this tariff, and you have to negotiate and come up with it. Come up with an agreed settlement. Now, if any of the WTO nations disagrees, then you have to renegotiate, and could take up to 10 years in legal fees to sort out. And remember that that would be our so-called dividend that they promised us. This would be consumed by having to negotiate this very weird WTO rules deal. So whenever they claim WTO rules is great, it's not as great as everyone thinks it is. It's only the WTO rules are only really a way to kind of plug the gap until trade agreements are agreed, which could take years and years. And in the meantime, we will struggle with import and exports. We'd have to have specific paperwork. This could cause major problems for people who are importers and exporters, because it will mean that it will take them twice as long in the borders. It'll also mean that they may lose competition to companies within the EU itself, so they will have to lay off jobs, which is what's been already claimed. There are loads of reasonings that the Brexit extremists have claimed are Project Fear. These are not Project Fear, by the way. These are actually reasonable arguments put forward by real experts. I'm sure that Nigel Farage, although he may be great, does not understand how farming works. He barely understands how fishing works, because he was hardly ever at any EU voting sessions. So when we bear that in mind, we must take account of all the things that we understand now. And scorched earth policy is not a great policy. And we will say, and this is a fair point, we're not blaming you for. I personally will not blame you for the way you voted. And if you change your mind, there's no shame in that, because I believe a lot of you kind of were misinformed or lied to, and I don't believe that you genuinely thought you were doing Britain a good service. But what you have done, and I'm not going to blame you for it, but what you may have done is made things a lot harder for yourself and other people, because of all the problems that leaving the EU will cause. Now, I'm not saying we won't fix them, but there are times we are unnecessary stress, and the sovereignty argument is irrelevant, because we've always had sovereignty regardless. We've always been our own nation, and the EU itself, all the EU was set up to do was create trade disagreements. There was no, we're going to build a super Europe. That was never the case, and it's never been the case. A lot of arguments that Brexiteers have used have been either proven to be lies or gross exaggerations. Yet Project Fear, yet when a guy who worked in security, Northern Ireland security, tells you that he has grave concerns about security post Brexit, I would rather take him seriously than Mister Nigel Fag and a Pint Farage, because he's an expert in what he did. Same with Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's not an expert on farming and agriculture, so I'm not going to take lessons on that from someone whose father wrote a book on how to make money during an economic crash. But there you go. That is why I support People's Vote, and I hope you do too. So I'll see you later.